Hannah. In this video I'm sharing the projects that I have been working on in July to reflect on the pieces that I made and the pieces that I didn't make that I was planning to, and just a bit of an update on where things are at and the lessons that I've learnt during the first month of working my way towards making my own handmade wardrobe. If you're new here, I'm Hannah. I'm a proud born and bred Yorkshire lass who's on a mission to craft my own handmade wardrobe full of items that I love. In my previous video, I shared the projects that I wanted to work on throughout July to make a start on making some staple pieces towards a handmade wardrobe that I'm going to be building up over the next few months, and sharing my journey with you as I develop those skills and progress with the projects that I make. And I wanted to come back today to share the projects that I've made in July that I talked about in my previous video, and reflect on the lessons that I've learned through that process, because this is the first month that I've set a target, or I guess outlined some projects that I was hoping to work on, and I wanted to come back and sort of reflect on that and think about what I might do differently going forward, and just talk about some of the patterns that I have loved and some of the pieces that I've created that I've really enjoyed creating, and also talk about what didn't kind of go to plan as well. So, because there's a few of those as well. So I will start by talking about the sewing projects and share those with you roughly in the order that I made them. I can't remember exactly the order that I made them all, but I'll share those with you first. So the first project I wanted to talk about was the Hansie top by Seamwork, which I made in a double gauze fabric. It's petrol blue with polka dots on it, and the first challenge I faced with this project was working out whether or not I actually had enough fabric to make the project to begin with, because when I ordered the fabric online there was only 80 centimetres in length left. So I was slightly concerned that I was already working with less than a metre of fabric, but I loved the colour of the fabric and I just really wanted to use it to make the Hansie top, so I risked it anyway. And fortunately the pattern itself doesn't require much fabric at all, so I managed to get it out of the 80 centimetres with room to spare, so that was a great start. So this is the finished top, and this was actually my first time sewing with double gauze fabric. I typically love sewing with knit fabrics and stretch fabrics, so this was a bit different for me. And I know that stretch is a bit love or hate, but I just find it very easy to work with, and that was when I very first started my sewing journey a few years ago. Those were the kind of fabric that I gravitated towards, so I've got a lot more experience sewing with knit fabrics rather than woven. So this was, as a piece to sew, very straightforward. It is just the front and back pieces with the pocket. It does have some darts and a facing, but in general it's a very straightforward piece and came together very quickly. So when sewing this piece, actually the challenges that I faced were more in just coming to terms with the fabric and working with the fabric. I think because it had a wider sort of weave, a more open weave, I quickly discovered that the fabric frays quite easily and doesn't like being overworked. So it was fine once all of the edges were finished and everything. It was easier to work with in that sense, but yeah, quickly discovered it wasn't up to a lot of handling like the knit fabrics that I'm more used to, which are a lot more resilient to being reworked, because the seam ripper was out a fair bit this month just while I'm getting to grips with sewing again after quite a long break. But it wasn't too much of an issue once I'd wrapped my head around that and was comfortable using it. The only other challenge that I found actually with the fabric itself was it's quite bouncy, in a sense that it doesn't, even with meticulous pressing, things like hems did not want to stay turned under and just kept wanting to spring out, which was infuriating, but was more just a bit of a learning curve than anything else. The only time it really proved an issue on this piece particularly was the pocket, because when I turned the edges of the pocket under to sew the pocket on, they kept wanting to sort of like spring out. So the pocket is not the neatest work, but it is on there. And I think because it doesn't stand out significantly against the background fabric, that I can get away with that. I think if it was a contrast pocket, it would be really obvious, but my slightly wonky pocket in this instance, I think I can get away with it. So I really enjoyed putting this piece together. I really liked, I like just the little details, like the stitched facing at the neck, I think is just a really nice finish. And overall the finished top is just, I think it's just really pretty. I think it's a very staple piece. It's like a t-shirt piece, but a little bit more elevated. So I've worn them quite a lot just because it's a really nice comfortable shape to wear, but looks just that little bit more put together than a typical sort of stretch fabric t-shirt. What I do love about the fabric is it's really comfortable and breathable, so it's been great for really hot days. So that's been really nice. So I am really pleased with the top. It's not perfect, but I think for a big starting piece for this project of crafting my own wardrobe, I think it was a great place to start, partly because the pattern is free, but also it's just a really great beginner's piece to get stuck in, and it comes together really quickly. I made it in like a couple of hours on an afternoon, so I was really pleased that I'd made a start, got a project checked and finished, and could move on from there. And in fact, from there, I actually then went on to create a second Hansie. So this second one I made in the same fabric but with a different print. This one has little hedgehogs on, which you'll have heard me talk about if you've seen my previous video. And I just think this fabric's really cute with the print and everything. And this top is just so summery. I think the blue is quite versatile for all year, but this colour and pattern just feels so floaty and summery, and it's just really pretty. So I do think that the second version I made, I'd wrapped my head around some of the nuances of working with the fabric, and I was obviously much more comfortable with the pattern having already just made one. So the pocket is slightly neater. There's still room for improvement, but it's a little bit neater. The darts I think are slightly more equal. I think maybe on the first one the darts were not quite so neat, and I definitely finished the hems way neater than on the first one because I'd felt much more comfortable knowing how the fabric worked, that it just needed very meticulous pressing and pinning to get it all to stay so that I could stitch it neatly. But overall I really loved working with the double gauze fabric eventually when we got over those initial hurdles, just because I think it's just such a nice lightweight fabric that feels very summery, and I love the kind of texture that's on the fabric. It's just a little bit different, and I'm just really obsessed with this top. I made both tops in the Seamwork size 8 with no alterations, just as it comes. It's quite a boxy, oversized t-shirt anyway, so it's obviously it doesn't need a whole load of alterations to the pattern. I do like the Seamwork patterns because I seem to fit very neatly into their standard sizing, so I haven't really had to make any alterations to their patterns, but it was just a nice straightforward piece, and I definitely think that I'm going to end up with plenty more of the Hansie tops in my wardrobe before too long. I'd really like to experiment with different patterns and different fabrics and textures. I think because it's such a versatile and easy piece, it's a great way to try out different types of fabric, which I'm really interested in doing. And I think they're just great pieces that I'm going to wear again and again, so I'm really pleased with how they turned out. So the next project that I worked on was another Seamwork pattern, and it was the Loretta top. And with this top, I actually didn't love it when I first saw the pattern on the website. It wasn't one that really stood out to me, and it wasn't one that I had flagged as a project that I wanted to do. And then I saw someone wearing a version that they'd made on another video and just absolutely loved it. It just was so pretty and feminine and floaty and summery that it really converted me to the pattern, and I really wanted to give it a go. So I created the version that is the shorter version. So there's two. There's more like a tunic one with, I think it has like a belt or a tie, and then just a shorter one. So I picked the shorter version, and I think it's quite a close call. There's a lot of pieces that I've made this month that I really love, but I think this might be my favourite piece. So from going from a pattern that I just wasn't, it just didn't really win me over, to being one of my favourite pieces so far was it was insane, really. So I think what I like most about the Loretta, I think I just got a winning combination of the pattern and the fabric and the print all sort of just worked so nicely together to create this piece, and I've already worn it several times so far this summer. So this is my finished Loretta, and as you can see, again, this is in the double gauze fabric, so by the time we came to this piece I was much more confident sewing with it, for starters. And it also hasn't got the details like the pocket and stuff, so the only bit that could have been a little bit fiddly was the hems. But this one, it's got slightly less texture than the other two. The other two have got a slightly more textured finish to them. This one hasn't got quite the same, so this one wasn't quite so bouncy when I was trying to press it. The seams are still a little bit, the hems are still a little bit wobbly, but it's a busy pattern, so you can't notice, so I don't feel too bad. I'm still happy with the finish of the top. But I think just the structure of the fabric, I think, just works really well. It gives these flutter sleeves just such a nice finish, especially when it's on. They just sit so nicely. And it's just, it has the raglan sleeve, which I really like. I think it's just a really nice style of sleeve. They're nice and easy to fit, I find, and they just look really nice with the finish. And then it has the elasticated neckline to sort of gather it and fit the wider neckline. And I think, yeah, like I was saying, just I think the pattern and the texture just works so well with this, the shape of the top. I'd also quite like to do one, I think, at some point in maybe a white eyelet type fabric. I think would look really pretty and summery again, but I've got a few other projects to get to before I do another one of these, I think. But I'm just so pleased with the overall finish, and I just love it. I think this might be my favourite piece. I did learn a few things though whilst making this project. Again, I made it in, I believe it was the size 8 of the Seamwork pattern, sort of as it came. So I didn't make any alterations when I was cutting. In hindsight, if I made it again, I might actually downsize one. It is quite an oversized fit, which is fine, but for me personally, I actually prefer this top tucked in, because I feel like it's a little bit, it drowns me a little bit when it's not tucked in. It's not the end of the world, I still love it. But just for future, if I made another one, I might actually size down, which is the first pattern from Seamwork that I've found I probably would actually size down on. And the other thing was, you can choose the length of the elastic for the neckline, so you can do it longer and wear it as an off the shoulder. I don't tend to wear that many off the shoulder tops, so I wanted more of a neckline rather than an off the shoulder. And I probably could have got away with just making that elastic slightly shorter still than I did, just to make it just to make a slightly snugger fit around the neckline so it's not quite as big. But like I said, I think it's still one of my favourite pieces that I made this month. It's just so pretty and so nice to wear out. Again, the really big floaty sleeves just make it really breathable as well. I've actually worn it when we went out walking, so it's quite good for, you know, it's a cute top just for out on a summer's day, but also it's quite, you know, because it's so big, it's the advantage of it being oversized is it's just so breathable and comfortable to wear for a bit more, I'm not going to say hiking, maybe not quite that extreme, but if you're out doing a lot of walking like we were, it was just so comfortable to wear and still looked really pretty. So absolutely love that top. Again, we'll definitely make some more of these in the future. And it just came together so easily, so quickly. Again, just a couple of hours in an afternoon. And I love it. I think it's great. So the next project that I was working on was a bit of a break from tops, and I decided to work on the poppy playsuits. And I have made the playsuit in the past. So I felt quite comfortable that I knew what I was doing with this, and that it was a fairly straightforward piece to make, which was true, but I did put a bit of pressure on myself to finish it in quite a short time frame because I was going to visit family in Bristol for a few days and decided I wanted to take it with me when I had barely started sewing it. So I did put a bit of time pressure on getting it finished, which made it slightly frantic, but it was finished in time. I'm really pleased with the finish, and I did get to wear it on our trip to Bristol. So the thing I love about the poppy playsuit is it's just, again, super comfortable to wear. Again, there's a lot of pieces I've made this month that have got elasticated necklines, waistlines. It just makes it so much easier, particularly as a beginner, to kind of get that nice fit without a lot of, you know, without the need for zips and really detailed tailoring. I've picked pieces specifically that were pretty straightforward and that I knew I could get a nice fit with without lots and lots of work. So the poppy playsuit ticked that box, and I think it's just such a nice piece. I love playsuits. I think they're great. I tend to favour them over dresses, to be fair. I think they're a lot more practical. Again, I don't know if it's because I do a lot of walking and hiking and stuff, but a lot of the time I'm just not ladylike or elegant enough for a dress. I need something that's feels a bit more hard wearing. So I love a playsuit. I just feel very comfortable in a playsuit. So here is my finished poppy playsuit, and I was really pleased that I had plenty of this fabric, because if you watched the last video, I talked about, I don't actually know where this came from. I think it was probably from one of my local stores, but it's been in my stash for such a long time, and I really wanted to put it to good use. And I think there's probably a chance I bought it with the intention of making a poppy playsuit. It feels like they were made to go together, so I might have bought it with that intention. But I'm really pleased that it finished just exactly as I'd pictured. But I did make a lot of changes to, at least a few changes to the fit of the pattern. So the first change I made, and I can't remember exactly what the sizes were, but lengthwise, so for this is going to get really complicated, but for the top to bottom of all of the pattern pieces, I cut to the biggest size, which I think is maybe 20 to 22. I don't know if it's that big. It's much bigger than the size that I would typically need based on measurements. However, with the playsuit, I'd rather have it slightly oversized and baggy than too short and not fitting in the right places. And I also prefer shorts that are on the slightly longer side as well, so I didn't want really short shorts. So when I was cutting out the pattern pieces, the tops and bottom of all the pieces I cut on the biggest measurement, and then on the sides I didn't cut them to the full width. I cut them, I think I sized up one size so I took my measurements and then sized up to the one size up. When I look back, because I have made this several years ago, I actually think I made it 2 sizes bigger. In the width, I actually just didn't have enough fabric, to be fair, to fit that on and the next one that I'm going to show you. But the fit on this I think is pretty good. I'm really pleased with it. I'm glad that I kept the length just for the comfort and the slightly longer shorts. And then the width size, it feels oversized but without being huge, and then obviously is pulled in by that elastic waistband anyway. So I think overall it got a really good fit, despite the fact that I absolutely butchered the pattern trying to make it longer and slightly oversized on the width. So I'm really pleased with how the fit came off. The only thing that I might still change, because the top is quite oversized, which is the fit that I want, it does mean that the hook and eye in the back is not the most secure, just because the fabric moves around quite a lot as I'm wearing it because it's oversized. So I might actually put a loop in there and a button just to make it a little bit more secure with the fit, so that it's not coming undone. When I was wearing it, I felt every time I took my jacket off, the movement caused the hook to come undone. We did squeeze the hook in a little bit so that the hook itself was not as wide, so it locked the loop in a bit better, and that did help. But I might change it for a button at some point so it's a bit more secure. We'll see how it goes when I next wear it. Challenge wise, I still have issues with the facing on this pattern, which I did the last time I did it. Even when I understitch, the facing has a habit of rolling out. I don't know if it's just because it's so oversized when I've made it, because I did make it bigger than I needed it, that it just kind of bags out a bit at the front. So I did end up stitching around the neckline, just top stitching around the neckline to keep it in place a bit better, which does help. It still flicks out a little bit, but generally it works a lot better than without the top stitching. But I don't mind the finish with I like the top stitching on it anyway. I top stitched the last one I did just because I think it just looks a bit more finished. I don't think the pattern has the top stitching. I think it's just understitched the facing. So yeah, there's that. I don't know why I have so many issues with the facing on this one, but it's roughly fixed anyway. And then the other thing that I forgot about this pattern, particularly when I decided I was going to try and get this finished before my trip, is the sheer amount of hand sewing that is involved in the turn-ups on the sleeves and on the legs. And I am not a huge lover of hand stitching. It is well worth it in a lot of projects especially where it calls for it, because the finish on the hand stitching is so much nicer and crisper, and especially these turn-ups, you know, they need hand stitching, but I just forgot how much there was. So the night before my trip, where nothing is packed, nothing was ready, the house was a mess, and I'm still sat there hand stitching all of these turn-ups to just get that nice finish. Don't get me wrong, it was absolutely worth it, and I think they look great, but I was questioning my sanity at the time when I was trying to get ready, and I was just sat there sewing my playsuit. But I'm really pleased with the finish. Again, it's probably a piece that I will make another one of later down the line. I don't think I'll probably make as many as some of the tops. I tend to make a lot of tops because I'll just kind of pick a top and jeans, and that's what I live in 90% of the time. But I do think I'll probably end up making more poppy playsuits in the future. Also, the pattern that I have only has the short version because it was a free version of the pattern from a magazine a long time ago. But if you buy the pattern, there's 2 variations. There's the playsuit and then there's a full-length jumpsuit, and I really like jumpsuits as well, so I might end up buying the full-length, the pattern to get the full-length jumpsuit one, because I might also make a jumpsuit at some point as well. But yeah, for now, this is the Poppy Playsuit, and yeah, again, really pleased with how that came together. So the next project is another top, and again, it's a Seamwork pattern. I did talk about in my last video that I was doing a lot of Seamwork patterns this month just as I was building my confidence in sewing again, because the instructions are impeccable. They're so easy to follow, the Seamwork patterns, so that's why there's so many Seamwork pieces. But the next one that I worked on was Riley, and I was really excited about doing this piece. This is the one that I created using the same fabric as the Poppy Playsuit, so that was why I was really tight on the amount of fabric. Like, I was doing everything I could to get these pieces out of the fabric that I had. But I'm so pleased that I managed it, because I love the Riley top. I think Riley is going to be my go-to for any time I've got some fabric left over, because it doesn't require a lot of fabric and it's really easy to come together, and I just love the fit of the top. It is very summery, so probably going to have limited months of the year that I'm going to get wear out of Riley, but I'm just so pleased with how it came together, and it was just so easy. So this is my finished Riley top, and as you can see, one of the ties has come undone already, but it's just a really sweet top that when you tie the bottom, you get this nice sort of slightly cropped fit, but then it sort of cinches that in, and then the rest kind of like balloons out, which is going to sound really unflattering, but it's not. I'll insert a video so you can see what the finished look is. So this pattern came together, the piece came together like an absolute dream. I think I even posted on Instagram, I think it was the first project all month where I didn't have to use the seam ripper. Like, it was just a dream. It was so good. So there's not actually that much that I have to comment on it, because it came together so easily. I mean, it has a couple of small darts and then the channel for the ties. The only slight, I'm not going to say mishap, a slight learning curve was I had a slight issue fitting the, finishing the binding on the neckline, but I'd nailed it by the time I did the sleeves, so that's the only bit, but you can't see that when I'm wearing it. So and there's also the very slightest little bit of gathering going on here from when I've attached the binding, but again, it's very minimal, and I notice it because I know it's there, but I feel like no one else is noticing it when I'm wearing it. So yeah, overall, I just love it. I just think it's such a cute piece. It's a very close contender with Loretta for my favourite piece of the month, I think. I just love it. It's very, very summery. This style particularly, I'm probably only really going to wear it in summer, but I just think it's so cute. It'd be great for taking on holiday and things like that. So yeah, absolutely love this piece, and I'm really pleased with it. And the other thing that I did learn when making this piece, and you might laugh at me because you might already know what this is, but I had never heard of a loop turner before until it was recommended on the pattern. So I looked it up online, and just in case you're like me and you don't know, it's a tool that you use to like turn out straps, and I, prior to that, had been using like a knitting needle to like shove it through when I've turned stuff out in the past, and it takes like days. It's the most infuriating process. And this loop turner, it took me like seconds. So you might already know about loop turners and you might laugh at me that I didn't, but just in case you're like me and you didn't, then just invest in a loop turner because it will change your life. Turning these things out took like seconds, and the tool cost me about £2 or £2.50 on eBay. So it was a worthwhile investment, and I will definitely not be put off making things with straps or ties in the future because it just makes life so much easier than it was before. So the last sewing project that I worked on this month was the Meg Dress, which again is another Seamwork pattern. And this dress, if you've watched my previous video, is the one where I talked about that I'd bought the fabric because I loved the fabric and I needed to find a project for the fabric, which isn't the way I normally do things. I normally like to I'll choose a pattern and then see what fabrics are recommended before I make a fabric purchase, just because I find it really difficult if you've got like a certain length of a specific fabric in a certain colour and pattern in your stash. Sometimes trying to find a project for it is really tricky. But when I bought this one, I pictured a really pretty summer dress, and I knew the Meg was kind of like the closest that I had to this picture in my mind. So I wanted to give it a go. And the fabric itself is the same as the Petrol blue Hansie top, the first one that I made. And it's just in this mustard yellow colour, which I absolutely love. It's one of my favourite colours. I already do have a lot of dresses in that colour, but they're dresses that I bought rather than ones that I made. But I just could picture this dress that I really wanted in my mind. And I don't wear that many dresses. I do own a lot of dresses, and it's one of the reasons why I've kind of come on this journey for making my own clothes, is because my lifestyle has changed quite significantly over the last 5 years or so. Originally, I was working in sales in the tech industry, and I had all of these beautiful dresses that I would wear to client meetings that were very sort of business style dresses. And I love them. I still love them. I still have a lot of them that I can't quite bear to part with, but I just never wear them anymore because I'm not in that world anymore and I don't need those kind of dresses. So I wanted a dress that was much more suited to what I do now, I guess. So I wanted something that I could wear in the summer months to, if I'm just going out around the shops or maybe just meeting up with some friends or something. And I think Meg was the perfect decision for this fabric. So this is the finished Meg dress, and even now it just makes me so happy to look at it. Just the colour and everything is just perfect for what I had pictured. I mean, the first thing that I love about it is the gorgeous flutter sleeves and just the finish that they have, again with that double gauze fabric, and seeing how the sleeves came together so well on Loretta made me even more confident that this was the right pattern for this fabric. So I'm obsessed with the sleeves still. It's the first thing that I look at when I see it, and that those flutter sleeves were exactly what I was picturing when I was imagining this dress. It's got this tie neckline which creates this cute sort of little gather with the cord, and then an elasticated waist. So again, it's a really easy piece for beginners. I think it's confident beginner level, I think is how it's categorized, but it's just that, again, the instructions are so straightforward to follow, that it was just a really easy piece to put together. And I'm obsessed with it. I just think it's so pretty. So with this one, I'm really glad that I had done the other projects in the double gauze fabric first, so that I could was a bit more familiar with it, especially with when it comes to the hems. Like I talked about on the Hansie top, it was initially a little bit tricky for things like hems and that pocket, because the fabric was it doesn't press very well. It kind of wanted to spring out. I'm glad I'd learnt that on that project first, because the sheer amount of hems between these flutter sleeves and this skirt, it would have been a nightmare. And I don't love hemming, which sounds ridiculous because I know it's like the finishing, it's like the last thing, but for whatever reason my brain just it kind of counts the progress in like the number of pieces that still need attaching. So once all of the pieces are attached, like my brain is just like content. It's like, okay, it's all together, we're on the home stretch, and then you end up with loads and loads of hems to do, and I don't have that much patience for hems. I think it's just because they're a bit fiddly for whatever reason. I don't know what it is, just the way my brain works, but I don't love hems. So I was pleased that I knew in advance that they were going to be a bit fiddly, which meant that I pretty much put the whole dress together one day and then just left the hems until the next day so that I could come back to them when I wasn't going to be fighting them, basically, when I was in the mood to do them. So I am very, very pleased with how they finish. They're not perfect, obviously. There's, it's still just going to take some more practice to get them super neat. I think this one over here is slightly puckered in places, but I'm really proud of it. I think I'm just really happy with how it's finished overall. The other thing on this one that I was initially unsure of was the cord. So the cord that I've got in here is, I think it's 1/4 inch cord, which is what the pattern recommended. And as soon as I put it in, I didn't love it because it felt really big and clunky and kind of like it's taking over the whole dress. So I threaded the cord before I finished the hems. So I, in the meantime, ordered some more cord online and thought, oh, I'll finish the hems and switch out the cord. But when the new cord came, it was tiny, it's so thin, and it was only a millimetre or two smaller, but it just looked so drastically different in scale. So initially I was going to swap it out, and then I actually changed my mind, partly because this cord fits perfectly in the channel around the neckline, and I think the cord is pretty integral to the structure of the neckline and creating these cute little pleats initially, but also without the cord that neckline is super baggy. So again, I made this in the size 8 based on my measurements, and it fits perfectly. But one of the problems I do often have with dresses, particularly if they're like fitted all the way down, is that my hip measurement is quite a bit bigger than the top measurements. So if it was a fitted dress, trying to get a dress that fits my hips and waist and bust is quite difficult, and I do find that it tends to be a bit too baggy on the top with dresses that I've made in the past, and I was worried that that was what was going to happen with this one, because before the cord was fitted in, that neckline was so big, it just felt like the whole dress was massive and just looked too big on me. So in my head I was already trying to figure out what I could do to, where I was going to have to alter it to get it to fit better. But as soon as I threaded the cord and it sort of gathered around the neckline, it just fits like a dream. It's the perfect fit. So at the minute, I shared the finished project on Threadloop, and the comments were quite is equally divided as I am. Some people loved the cord, some people hated it. For the time being, I'm sticking with it. And I think that's the beauty of making your own clothes, is that obviously if I do end up wearing this a couple of times and decide that I don't like the cord, I can just switch it out. But for now, I think I'm going to keep it. I think I do like it. It's growing on me. I do think it's still a little bit... It's very prominent, but I like it. I think it just finishes the dress off and looks really nice. So I'm gonna stick with it. But overall, I'm just so pleased with the dress and how it's come together. And yeah, I'm so happy. I've not had a chance to wear it yet. I can't wait until I have an opportunity to wear it, because I'm just so pleased with it. But I'm just waiting for that moment. And it's everything I pictured in a dress that I think will be very practical and very wearable. I think it's also going to be really comfy as well, obviously with the elasticated waist. The sleeves are pretty big, so it's very breathable, and just the fabric itself is very, very breathable as well. So yeah, absolutely love this piece. I'm really glad that it was like the last piece that I made of the month, because I think it just shows how much my how much I've improved, I guess, particularly on like things like the hems and just the overall finish. I think it just looks way, you know, just way neater, I think, than the earlier pieces that I made. But yeah, I'm really pleased with that. So that was the Meg dress. Now, if you saw my previous video where I talked about the projects that I was working on in July, you might have noticed that there are a couple of sewing projects that aren't here that I haven't done. And I just wanted to take a moment to talk about why those projects aren't finished. So the first one is the Bardo style sheared top by Sewing with Olive. And this top it's like well on its way. I did encounter an issue though. So when I came to do the sheared panel on the top, for whatever reason, the shearing is just over shearing. It's way too tight. So as I was shearing it, you could see the top just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and it was like, you know, it would have basically fit on my arm as a sleeve by the time I was finished. So I did attempt to do a bit of troubleshooting. I was already doing a lot of the things it recommended, so I was already using the longest stitch length, and I had hand wound the shearing elastic onto the bobbin. So I'd kind of done the obvious things and it still wasn't really working for me. So there were a couple of things that have been recommended that I didn't try. One of them is to reduce the pressure on the foot. So if I lift the foot itself a little bit, that might stop it from over shearing. Or trying a walking foot was another recommendation. I don't have a walking foot, so if reducing the pressure of the foot doesn't work, I might have to invest in a walking foot and see if that works. But if you have any tips on how to get the shearing to not overgather, that would be great, because I really want to finish that top. And it will be so quick to do when I've figured out this issue with the shearing. I just didn't have the time this month to try and fix it in the moment, because particularly as I'm trying to get back into sewing, I just kind of wanted to build my confidence, and I didn't want to be slowed down basically by trying to figure out that issue. So I parked it, and I do need to come back to it if I can figure out this issue with the shearing, and I really want to finish it because I really love the look of that top. So I'm going to work on that one, hopefully get that sorted and finished if I can figure out this issue with the shearing. The second pattern that I shared that I was hoping to work on was the Sophie swimsuit. And again, this hasn't completely gone away, but the biggest challenge I faced with this project was I didn't even get started because I found it very confusing to work out which pattern I even needed to print, because and I'm sure when it comes to having printed it and cutting it out, it actually makes it easier, but I think if I remember rightly, you kind of print the size you want and then it has a couple of sizes up or down, sort of grade in, so that you can grade the sizing if you want to. But that's obviously different from a standard pattern where you print it and tape them together and then cut out your specific size. Just to get as far as printing it, I needed to figure out which size I needed to print, and there were some size differences between sort of my bust and my waist and my hips that meant I needed to figure out which pattern I needed to print and then which I was grading to, and just trying to figure it out got a bit complicated. Also, they use their own bust measurement style. It's not like a standard bust measurement, so you then also have to work out which bust size you need for the cups, so the cup size will be different from typical sizing, so and then you have to work out which size you need to print those out. So it just got a little bit overwhelming to try and figure out what sizes I needed, so I knew what I needed to print. I think in reality what I need to do is print at least the sizing instructions page. I don't normally print my instructions. I normally just print the pattern and then read the instructions on my laptop as I'm working through it. But I think I'm going to have to print at least the sizing stuff so that I can write my sizes on alongside the grid and the instructions, so that I can figure out which pages I need to print to make a start on it. I think once I've printed the pattern, I actually think progress then will be much easier. I think I just got stalled and I didn't want to get really hung up in spending ages trying to work out the right size pattern to print, and just decided to carry on with the other projects and revisit that at a different time. So that one's not gone forever. I am still very keen to work on that. And I do have a holiday coming up where I would love to take it with me, but I just don't know that it's going to be done in time. So, but rather than put the pressure on that project to be like, I'm trying to get that finished in August or for this trip or whatever, I think it's a pattern that I'm just going to take quite slowly, and because it is a little bit more advanced than the projects that I've been working on, and just work on it, a step or two at a time. So I am hoping, if nothing else, in the month of August, I figure out what size I need so that I can get that pattern printed and cut out. And if nothing else happens, at least I'll have made progress on that. But it hasn't gone away forever. And then the other thing I talked about in my last video was the knitting projects that I was working on, because as well as sewing, I want to develop my knitting skills a little bit more. And I started knitting I didn't start knitting, I revisited knitting the Fino Circle scarf, which is a project I started years ago, and then it got put on a shelf and I didn't pick it up since. So I did revisit it, and I am nearly there. I was saying nearly there. So there's a bit of a roundabout story as to why this isn't finished and why I don't actually know how far I am off finishing it. But I do have 2 cats, and if you own cats, then you'll know that they instantly want to help with everything that they shouldn't be helping with. And knitting is one of them. My cats are obsessed with knitting. They'll attack the needles, they'll steal the ball, but the nightmare one is when they get their claws stuck in the knitting and then they'll pull it, which they did do, one of them did do with the scarf. So I've already had to fix the scarf once because she pulled it. But that's now repaired. However, the challenge I'm having is actually measuring how long this scarf is, because I think the pattern recommends it's like 70 something inches that you need to knit it to. And I am nearly there, but I have very few opportunities where I can actually lay the scarf out to properly measure the length of it without cats getting involved. So I think for ages I was convinced I was so close. Every time I measured it, I was like, oh, it's 10 inches away, and oh, it's 6 inches and 2 inches. But because I'm always measuring it so quickly and trying to do it around, cats, and I can't lay it on the floor and stuff, I don't think I've just ever been able to accurately measure it, because for ages, every time I measured it, it was like a perpetual 10 inches away from finishing it. Irrelevant of how much knitting I did, every time I measured it, it still needed 10 inches. So I think, obviously when I was trying to lay it out and measure it, it was kind of pulling, depending on the floor, when I was laying it out, as I pulled it out and then measured it, it was kind of stretching. So it was quite difficult to gauge how long it is accurately. I do think I'm, only a few inches away, if at all. I mean, at this point, it could be longer than the recommended length. I don't know anymore. So what I actually need to do is lay this thing out and measure it accurately when the cats aren't around. So I need to shut them out and measure it. I just have not had a chance to do that for the last few weeks. So it is very, very close to being finished. It will definitely be finished in August. It's very close. I'm really pleased with how it's coming together, actually. I really enjoyed the process of knitting it, just because it's all sort of stockinette stitch. It's just very relaxing to do, and it's just been really nice to sit and do some knitting, which, like I said, I haven't done for years. But I did, when we got to the point that it was just didn't seem to be growing, I did end up shelving it for a little while to have a bit of a break because it just felt like it was going nowhere. But we are nearly there. It is going to be finished without the help of the cats, hopefully, and that will hopefully be done in August. So overall, I'm really, really pleased with the progress on the July projects, particularly the sewing projects. I'm pleased with how many of those I got done. I think all in it finished as 4 new tops, the playsuit and the dress. So really good progress towards my goal of this handmade wardrobe that I'm working towards. And yeah, just really proud of seeing how much my sewing has improved from the very first project to the Hansie top through to Meg, the dress, the latest one. I think it's been, you know, through quite a transformation in quite a short amount of time, and I've definitely felt like my confidence has grown. I think one of the overall things that I'm taking away from this month is that I think what's been really good is focusing on those beginner or confident beginner projects that can happen, they come together very quickly in, you know, like a few hours or spread it over 2 or 3 days, because I think it's just really helped build momentum. Obviously in the long term, eventually I will get to doing pieces a little bit like the surfy swimsuit where I'm going to take a bit more time over them. It's less about, you know, what can I do in one afternoon, and it's more about that process of developing those skills and, you know, taking more time on pieces and putting them together very carefully. But I think the real win for this month particularly has been just focusing on those easier patterns that have built my confidence and moved me forward quite quickly to creating several pieces. And I think that that's just really boosted my confidence and just made working on the projects a lot of fun as well, because you get that satisfaction of having finished them in just a few hours. So I think that's been a really good takeaway from this month, is that I'm probably rolling into August. I think I'll probably follow a similar approach to stick with some of the more basic patterns, but that can help, you know, continue to develop skills and confidence, so that beyond that I can start looking at picking up some more slightly more complicated pieces. So yeah, really pleased with my July progress, and I already have picked out my August project and I've got the fabrics ready as well. So I will be filming another video in the next few days to share those with you as well. So if you want to see what I'm going to be sewing next, I am going to share my August projects in my next video. So make sure you come back for that, and subscribe to follow along and watch this handmade wardrobe that I've now officially started begin to evolve. So let me know in the comments what you have made in July, because I would love to know what you've added to your wardrobe, or if you've made something else, I'd love to hear all about it. And until then, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!